This social media campaign started over the summer, and it has just snowballed because there are so many things that just don't add up.
I think it was May of this year. A friend of the family reached out to me and told me about the case, and I did a reading for her. From that reading came a whole bunch of other events, including going to the family's house. Sometimes I don't like going on location because of the emotions that are going on in the house. I go there very neutral, without any kind of opinion. And I have to keep that way during the whole investigation. I already got certain things before I went to the house.
Okay.
And that information I don't dismiss. I actually go back to my early information, and then I take the later information, I build on top of it, and then for the first time. But you have to understand that I work on a lot of suicide cases. I've worked on a lot of suicide cases with kids, with adults. I don't think it ever has happened where they doubted it was suicide. Exception here. Usually they want to know about, like, if there's, what was going through at the time or what was happening at the time, because a lot of suicide cases are drugs. And there's usually a track record there. So most of the families expected something bad to happen. There are some suicide cases where actually there were no signs, but there usually are signs when we trace it back that that person is suicidal. But coming onto the scene here, and I remember going to the house for the first time, and I saw a man upstairs. Okay.
Oh my God.
So I already knew, not physically, but in
Of
my mind.
course.
Okay.
hmm
So I already knew that there was a man on the premises at that time. And when I met with the parents, and this is the problem with this case, there wasn't a lot of evidence. And I understand that these smaller towns, they don't have the luxury, the money to put in a really large investigation, or the resources. But when I went into that house, I instantly knew this wasn't suicide.
Right. And that's what the Yorktown Pocasson police have been saying since this happened on April 14th of this year. It's about a 12-year-old who was babysitting his little brother. And they had just gotten back, the family had just gotten back from a cruise. Things were really exciting in the house. They were getting ready to
Actually, they were
move.
in Disney World.
In this case, there was absolutely nothing that would make anyone think that there was a suicide. So Sean was found by his older sister in the backyard in the afternoon. She didn't know who it was at first. She walked towards the swing set because she couldn't get into the house. There was a car that was waiting for her. Her boyfriend and her boyfriend's mom were dropping her off because Ramona wasn't there for just a few minutes. Ramona is the mom. And she had taken her mother to an appointment, but it was pretty fast. It was a local thing. They were just going to go there and back. The older sister, she arrived home. She couldn't get in. She knocked on the door. She called her mom. She says, "Where's Sean?" Next thing you know, she goes around the corner, around the house, and sees someone. And I think she was just in shock. She didn't even know what she was looking at. She didn't immediately recognize Sean. And then when she walked up, the first thing that she sensed was that someone was watching her, and she smelled this odor. And it was very pungent. So what she
Mhm.
did is she realized that it was Sean. She didn't know because there was a bag over his head, and and there was a belt around his arms. I thought they'd struggled.
They couldn't do it themselves. Apparently, from what I heard, it took something to pry it off of him.
Wow. I,
So you're talking about a boy who had a bag or something covering his head. He had a thin rope around his neck. His feet were bare and had no dirt on them either, because you have to walk through the yard and your feet are going to get dirty. So there was no dirt
exactly.
on his feet,
Mhm.
and he was not dressed in his clothing. He was dressed in his father's clothes.
Exactly.
So the other thing too was a chair was brought over from the porch, a very heavy wrought iron chair, which
That's
would
a
be
big clue.
very hard for a boy to do. I'm sorry, but if I asked any kid in the neighborhood about his height, about his age, to recreate uh, doing this and performing it, I don't know how they would do it.
Sean could never lift that chair. And in fact, he was asked to lift that chair a week before and he couldn't, and his sister had to lift it instead. That is, it seems maybe small to them, but that's I would say, a major clue
Yeah.
in. And then the knot was the other thing too. When covered.
Nylon, yeah, it was a nylon string, nylon rope, which would probably it might hold your laundry if you used it for a laundry line. That, so it wasn't very strong.
Exactly.
It was strong enough to just kind of hold them up. I've covered many hanging cases,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, I've had to go into forensic pictures.
And let me just say something quickly about the belt. What's really unusual, and the private investigators, they believe that that belt was simply just to carry Sean from the master bedroom, that it was for no other purpose.
I
And
think so.
so, what was very curious was that there were no prints on the belt. Another red flag. Wouldn't you have seen Sean's prints on the belt?
Initially, I believe the law enforcement, just based on what they saw, uh, didn't. I don't know if prints and everything were taken immediately.
Mhm.
It's very. These people are, very sharp. I was actually surprised how, even though it was overwhelming sadness in the house when I was there, they were cool, calm, and collected enough to be able to give me facts. Most people in this situation, with suicides, I couldn't talk to them. I mean, I'd have to talk through a friend or something.
Mhm.
It just, but they knew for a fact this is a kid who, number one, never went to a psychiatrist, never went to a therapist,
Mhm.
doesn't have any record of psychological illness. And what was interesting is that they said he did on the report, and maybe it was a mistake. It sounds like a mistake to me, because
I think that the parents were quite shocked by that.
I saw him the way I would examine somebody, and I did not find enough on the neck area to tell me that he was hung.
Yeah, it seems that there is a theory that he was suffocated, like by a pillow or something.
Suffocation was the principal cause of death.
Mhm.
There was some other bruising there.
Yeah, they
Uh,
think maybe like a pillow or something in the master bedroom, and
there was a lot of plastic bags too.
yeah, there was a lot of plastic bags. At first there was this dithering about whether the 2-year-old was asleep or not. Well, I think he was asleep before they broke in, and I say they because I believe there were two.
Yeah. He said this man was hitting Sean.
Right, right.
And he was there. Now, the other man, I believe, was outside watching through the window.
Okay. Maybe he was looking a lookout or something.
Yeah.
And the general theory is that, Sean, his alarm went off he used a lot of alarms. He's a straight A student. He knows what he needs to do at what time. So
Yeah.
the alarm goes off to take out the trash, and he's fixing himself a snack. But suddenly something happens in the kitchen, and he's chased up the stairs to the master bedroom, which is where the attack allegedly happened. And let me tell you, and this is going to show in the charts. I know you guys want me to get to the charts soon, which I will, but there are a lot of photographs, and I think that is partially due to how many photos that the police took at the crime scene. And Ramona will say that it was like just constant flashes, and they asked her to leave the room. But which is normal. You would ask someone to leave the room so that you can get all the photos and close the door and whatever. But she never saw those photos. No one has shared those photos with her of her own bedroom, and she's unable to get this or reports or tests or anything. There have been 2 attempts to get this and to write to FOIA, and she's gotten 2 responses declining. And they keep it open. That's the thing. People think that this is a closed case. It's not. It's an active case. And I'm sorry, but I don't see them closing this.
He's an amazing kid.
He's
the kind
so,
of,
yes, people would describe him as so sweet, very innocent, somebody who just thought of good of people, who would never think that somebody would come into their yard for any reason, and might even open the door for,
yeah.
always saw the good in people, I guess. And
We,
so I think that the door was open in the back. I don't think they broke in, or maybe they asked
the
him.
door was open, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was open.
And there was a large fingerprint, a
Yeah, I
big
know.
fingerprint, or not fingerprint, a handprint right on the door there.
And it was large.
And it wasn't any of the families. We know that.
Well, and let me get to really quick. There's a reason I put this picture here,
Yeah.
where this is where the attack happened. Wythe Creek Farms is the community, and the police. They're very proud of their community. That it is a beautiful community. I've never been there. I know you have, but I can only imagine that it's almost like a Desperate Housewives type of situation, where it looks so amazing and bucolic and simple, like simple life. It's safe, but under the surface there are secrets, there's drama, there are bad people. I don't want to think that that's the case, but after something like this, uh, I can't reach any other conclusion than who's holding on to these secrets. And we're going to get to that because I've got some video tonight I think you're going to be interested in, you, the audience. And but you can see that. Look how you have that forest behind you. And
It's right behind the house. And not only that, I believe that the suspects accessed the woods to walk through instead of walking in the street. And
yes,
it's very, very easy to do that. There was some evidence found of some small liquor bottles back there, which were recent.
yeah, there was a trail back there, and you could easily hop this fence. After, I guess there was a lot of leaves and stuff. It ended up being like a 2 or 3 foot fence. You can easily hop over it.
Yeah, I hopped over it. It was
Did
pretty
you?
easy.
That's a fire pit you're seeing. That's their backyard, and their former backyard. They do not live there anymore. And it is the coverage of the house is interesting. It's almost like this house on this street has the most covered landscaping, the most trees around it. So it's hidden. And does that make it the perfect crime?
Well, a lot of, depending on the house, I think their yard could have been a little bit more rectangular or more narrow. And you're looking at the Reddish house there, I believe. Is that
Well, I believe this is their house. And the
okay?
reddish, yeah. So
Okay. Uh,
here's where, look at how there's that, these trees and how they kind of enclose the house with, whatever's going on back here.
right.
And, it's you would just think it's the perfect neighborhood, and that's what they thought too. I mean, we have a family who really does well, and they have everything to give to their community to make it a better place. So they're almost like the perfect people that Sheriff Diggs, who, he's running for Senate, and he's very passionate apparently about public safety.
Mhm.
They are the symbol of that they would look out for others
But
if, yeah.
yeah, I think though it's not that way there. And when I went there, um, it kind of took me by surprise what I was feeling. And what I was feeling, and I feel that these suspects are connected to, is a cult. I believe it is quite heavy in that area, which, when we get to the motive of all this, totally ties into it. And the only way I can describe it is kind of a white supremacist Aryan race type cult.
Okay.
And a lot of people will be like, well, what does that have to do with Sean? It has to do with him. There's a bit of a jealousy thing here.
Yeah, jealousy comes out a lot in this, jealousy, real estate, some other scorpionic types of themes, which we'll take a look at too. And just to note that Michelle mentioned the picture, and I'm going to change it real quick. This is not the fire pit. This is an old picture, but this is where the swing set was. So, and I believe there was a trampoline there too. So there was some play structures there, and that also added for coverage for these intruders. So, now our main task tonight is to gather information or to information share about the perpetrators here. And so we'll use some of your psychic clues, Todd, and my astrology clues. And the way that I work with psychics, and I don't work with that many, as you know, last week I said, I haven't found up until I met Todd and John and a couple of others that I really am impressed with. Psychics sometimes are good in certain situations, but they really have to have a lot of experience with criminal cases. And so the way that I work with Todd is I don't do a normal interview. I wait. I'll look through the chart, and then there might be a long silence. But I know, and Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, you may be seeing something. You may be pulling something out of what I'm saying. So sometimes you have to be a little bit patient. Now, what we do is we look at the angles for really big clues. So
Uh,
what's labeled ascendant, the IC, the descendant, and the MC. Those are very, they're bold, they're in bold. And those planets close are just extreme, it's extreme energy. What's at the top of the chart is Neptune, and that's in the 10th house of Aquarius. And Neptune, you may recall, is at the top of the Delphi chart, or what is called the Snapchat murders. And so their photographs and video are very prominent in that case.
mm,
It also represents a scandal, a big scandal. And with Chiron right next to Neptune, it shows a a very big scandal where someone was was wounded. And maybe, photos of the wounds that are being blocked. And that's part of the scandal, is that uh, these photos are being blocked. And there is a need for access. The South Node, we always talk about in crime charts, it's what is left behind. You don't necessarily want to see something like this, but in this chart, it shows that he would gain quite a bit of notoriety, and he would affect change somehow. So in the ninth house, that is it's headlines, it's the press. And,
You
I
know,
want to mention something too. Drew Collins, I don't know if you caught him on YouTube. Some of you might have after my last show. Drew Collins is the father of Elizabeth Collins, who lost his beautiful daughter 10 years ago when she was kidnapped. And he just, he's got to deal with this. And it's so heartbreaking. And one of the things that he said that really helped him was being assigned a victim's advocate by the police. And Jared and Ramona were not given that opportunity because of the immediate assumption of suicide. So they were having to figure this all out on their own. Thankfully, they have some wonderful, wonderful friends who have been a big support to them. But that's the other thing, when the police jump we perceive that they jumped to a conclusion. Maybe they didn't, but I think that a victim and a victim's family, they're robbed. They have certain resources that they can't get to, and so and the other thing about Drew Collins's interview was that he said as soon as his daughter went missing. And this is different. It's a missing child versus a child that was found. But the FBI were called in. Other agencies were called in. They knocked on doors, within a mile, just kept knocking on doors. Do you know anything? They did a lot of things that gave Drew Collins comfort because they tried to check all the boxes of all the possibilities that could possibly have happened. And that did not
well,
seem to happen here.
that's what it comes down to. And I go through this all the time with families trying to solve investigations for family members. Yes, there was another tragedy that was labeled suicide by the police. It was actually not far from here, and you and I might be working on this case pretty soon. It's a case that started a couple of years ago, and I did get some updates from it, but I don't want to put any blame on the authorities who go through this stuff, but it is really varied between departments, very much so. I mean, the case that I solved out west of here, finding a missing person's remains, they worked on that case over 5 years, digging, searching in lakes. It was a big thing for me because I'm sitting here leading teams, and I felt bad about it. But hey, we eventually found one of the bodies at least. And so who knows the reason why some departments will spend more time than others, but no, like you said, I think in that case there should have been a little extra given to these parents who are not your normal parents.
Well, and I live in a community where there's typical crime, and you see Facebook pages, and immediately the police will send out an alert. Has anyone seen anyone that looks like this person? That they're doing 150%. There are a lot of great investigators out there. They just do more than what's expected, just really putting out alerts. And I think that that's the underlying theme here is, well, the community really wasn't informed. And why was that? If that was the case, because that's the perception. And so I think that's their next task now, is to come out and show us what you've done.
Mhm.
And, maybe change your mind. It's okay to change your mind and say, we took a look at it again because we communicated with Ramona and Jared. We went back again, and then we went back again. And you know what? We are going to track down this person or investigate that person. It's all about optics. It's what the community really needs right now with this case.
As far as the way that I investigate, it's kind of like, it's not that I don't care, but I stay neutral of people's opinions. So I see what I see, and I take what people say with a grain of salt. And I hate to say it, that's such a awful thing, but that's the only way I can keep straight as to how many suspects, what's the age, what kind of car, what kind of what kind of living did they make, so those are the things that I'm trying to find. Maybe if the investigators one day want to take this back up, I'd be happy to give them some of that information. It might lead to something. So in my job, it's kind of hard. I just can't come up with anything. I'm trying to find something, some angle to give them so that they can go a step further. You know what I mean?
Now, I'm showing Ramona's birth chart. We've got a lot more to get to, but this is such an interesting conversation, so I'm going a little bit slow. But there are so many of the charts that I've seen, hints of 2. Mercury is 2. Mercury is also documents, and you're going to see that throughout these charts. So you see Mercury at 21 degrees there. Neptune is missing documents. So, and this is in her 4th house. So, not sure what that means as far as 4th. You guys can take a look at it. But the other thing is that Mars is a man, and with Mercury, that's 2 men. And again,
so this is Ramona's chart.
That's her birth chart. Yes. So there was a transit where that actually, well, I shouldn't say actually, potentially happened. Sagittarius means Hollywood. So this is an indicator that this case could really get big to the point where it will intrigue a lot of people, and it already has. And what's really interesting too is it's a global community that is now fighting for this family, and we haven't yet seen it come into the national news. So, and that's the next thing. That's what's coming, I think. I'm saying this because, and it might be more of Mercury is documents too. That's a big theme here is the documents. And Todd, you've talked a little bit about that. Are you seeing anything about that, or is that something you want to touch on later?
Documents referring to what?
The case.
Oh, the case. Yes, it's an ongoing subject in this case.
Okay, that's good. We're going to leave it at that.
Whether we want to discuss that or not.
Okay. We'll hold on to that. What I've said so far is that I think that there are 2. I think that they probably have criminal backgrounds, if not 1. And this Ring camera was installed over a month after the murder. There were parts of the community that rallied together, and the school, and there were some really sweet people who came up and offered their condolences and then put plants around the tree and flowers, and people who really cared. I want to call it a memorial, but it was a tribute under the tree by his friends. We have this guy who just looks at it. Nobody knows who he is. The police have seen this video, by the way. I'm not sure what their response is to this. He picks up a plant, and it seems that he's reading it. And then you can see him looking up at the camera. I don't know if you can see how many times he looks up at the camera. He looks at the house, then he's going to look again here. He looks again there. He keeps looking, and then he turns around, and then he looks again. Seems like he's interested in the cameras on the house. That's just my first impression.
Well, I did see a car associated with one of the suspects, but I don't know if it was pulled up in front of the house. I think it was actually
Okay, here he is again.
Store.
Okay. And now who would park their car? And maybe that is his car right there. Maybe that's his car. And he doesn't pull up in front of the house. And then he just keeps walking, and we've seen this, but this is just another angle.
Personally, I don't think any of the suspects would be that kind of stupid to walk up and
I don't
examine.
think it's a suspect. I really don't. But
Yeah.
I think, and this is what I did was I did a crime chart for it. So let's take a
Okay.
look. It's really interesting. This was on the 7th of June, 5:10 p.m. We've got an ascendant in Scorpio. And when something like this happens, I like to look at the third house because that's the yard. And somebody's coming into the yard. So I want to assign this person as being Pluto, maybe. Maybe he's doing an investigation. He's investigating what's going on. Might just be, do you think he's just a curious guy?
I get the sense that, yeah. I don't think he lives right on that street. I'm getting the sense he lives actually down another block
Okay.
there. And
But what's really sketchy is that this was put out. No, I don't think it was by the police. The police just told Ramona to do it because they were too busy, from what I understand. That's what they said. So she sent it to the HOA, and they, I guess, distributed it however they did, social media, I don't know. And nobody recognized him. So how is he a neighbor in this community and nobody in that community recognizes him? I would like to know who he is. I don't
that's
think he's entangled, but I really feel like these two, I think more people know about this. Are you
there's
saying that it's limited to just two people?
there's well, that's a good point. And when I get to the suspect, then I can explain some of that too. I believe, okay, there's two suspects involved in this. One is
Mhm.
younger, 20s, other is a little bit older. I would say at least 15 years older, if not 20 years older. One thing before I forget, I have two silent witnesses at least. These are people who are not coming forward with information. I believe actually two are women. The two suspects, I saw details of, especially the person that was in the house. When I saw him in my mind walking up the stairs, it was weird. He was skipping stairs and he was on a lean, which leads me to believe he had either a limp.
Or was drunk?
He could have been, but I'm leaning more towards a physical abnormality in his legs. It's
Okay.
possible. Other thing I saw, which we also, I saw his thumbs, a mushroom style thumb. That's a thumb that's a shorter type thumb. Another thing, large hands, but also very dry, scaly, like he had been working with stuff. One of the first things that I said to the friend of the family was something about an auto parts store. So this could have been somebody who is fixing a car or now Sean told me he smelled what was like glue or something very strong. I know I could smell alcohol in his breath. I also saw white shoes. I saw shoes that looked like they were basketball, like high top sort of shoes. Foot size quite wide. Not a heavy guy, but quite wide. Um, darker hair, okay, light skin, darker hair. I believe they were both wearing hats. It's very possible, like baseball style hats. Um, the weirdest thing is I didn't see gloves. So, how could we not have fingerprints? Because I wasn't looking at gloves. there was a lot of plastic bags. God knows what they were used for, but they had plastic bags. That was part of the evidence found in the house, were plastic bags that weren't the same brand and color as the home had. Man outside, I'm getting a larger stature with lighter hair complexion, with some facial hair on him, hat as well. These two guys both have criminal records, nothing for murder, but I do get that the larger one or the one who was older, does have a felony on his record. I was getting DUIs, a more recent DUI, but I also get a DUI from his past, which is probably eliminated on his record now because so many years went by. Younger guy, I'm getting a lot of little misdemeanors. I'm also getting a feeling of like restraining order or something, or some kind of restraint, like he's not supposed to go somewhere, that kind of thing. I also feel that there was a woman connected to them who is not saying something. That's my other silent witness. But here's the thing, and you were talking about this. You were talking about other people. And the motive in this feels that there was, yes, first-time crime, and yes, sexual in nature. Yes, also, very twisted mindset. But there's support here. There's support in the crime. There's support among their friends who have probably committed crimes like this. See, that's the thing. When somebody does a crime alone and it's just them, there's a lot of times evasive action on that person, or karma catches up to them, okay? Or they keep committing crimes in order to reenact what they went through. It's almost like they need that to keep going. They don't just stop and say, I'm going to be a good guy for a while. But this crime has a support system. It has other people that commit brutal acts. So it's kind of like the mind is kind of at ease. I've got friends that are like this too. This is what we do. That's the severity of this crime, is that there was speculation, maybe this was accidental. And I looked at that as well, but it didn't feel accidental. I do believe other evidence was a knife, not used in the attack, but used as a threat. And also used to cut stuff like materials, maybe bags. But here's the thing. There was a knife in the family's kitchen that was missing, black handled knife. Some of the other things that were the most telling of all of this is the timing. So we have a window of about 20 minutes. That's it. Every single day, mom's home, grandma's home, kids are home.
Yep.
Not always in that order, but somebody's home at that time. What was different about this? What is the key indicator of the timing? And I do believe these people weren't in the house at the time. I believe they came in through the backwoods. The key indicator here is that the mom had to take her mother, the grandmother, to the doctor for an emergency type thing. I believe it had to do with blood pressure or something like that. So the son is home. He's going to go take a shower upstairs. They were religious about cleanliness because of COVID. Okay. Mom goes outside. She's right out front. She yells I have to take grandma to the doctor. And anybody who knows, if you take your grandmother to the doctor or the mother, it's not going to be 5 minutes. And that was yelled right there. So here's the biggest clue of the case. Anybody who knew about the timing of this would have to be within a couple of doors down from the house to hear this.
Wow.
And that's the thing that gets us about this case, is the timing. And
Because
not only that.
they were within earshot,
Yeah,
and, it could be a couple doors down, could be in that woods, which is
could
where
be in the
people
woods.
go.
Mhm. But they
But
would have to hear that.
yeah, they'd have to hear it, and they'd have to grab something. The thing is, though, is then we have the landscaper, and you would think, and maybe he had his equipment turned off, because you would think it would be difficult to hear what was going on.
Oh, by the way, this Lana asked if it was planned,
Yeah,
and I don't think so. It
okay.
was opportunity knocked. Now I'm
Oh.
finally getting some of what people write here. Third house neighbors, someone like siblings or someone in. I actually feel these people could be related to each other,
Yeah.
the suspects. So
I don't see, now Jupiter rules Sagittarius. I'd like to see a little bit more in Sagittarius, although ninth house also represents the planning house. So that's a possibility. I pointed to an asteroid there, but I'm not going to say what it is. I want you guys to figure it out because, we don't want to give away too much here. But next to Uranus and Mercury, I think that is a big clue in this chart. And this is the crime chart. This happens to be Virgo, a Virgo ascendant.
I hate being a Virgo. It's the
Uh,
worst sign on earth.
this one was actually at 327. Okay. And this is what Sean might have been doing. Now, remember, Pisces means showering. The sixth house is, I think, is bathing, but I really think that he was starting to do his chores at this point, or cleaning. Virgo is to clean. So,
Well, don't forget to tell the people that before this incident happened, right before,
mhm.
Sean turned in his homework online.
Exactly. So
So,
the ninth house would
you know,
represent studying and reading books, and Uranus in the ninth house is online. Mercury, again, documents. So he's submitting online documents, he's submitting them to a school. So you have the ascendant, and it's the blue line there is trining it. So it's easy for him. He's got his clothes on, because he has to take a picture of himself. He's doing what he's supposed to be doing.
but
At this point, he's showing himself with the clothes that he was wearing.
uh-huh.
And so, anyway,
Although he was found in his, just so they know, he was found with his father's clothes on.
right.
And you said something important about the belt. It was used because of transporting outside. That was the belt part, why that was there.
Right.
The clothing, anybody who knows, when dressing somebody, it's easier to put them in larger clothes than it is smaller clothes.
Mhm.
And I believe that was the reason why the father's clothes was used. It was easier to put on. The other thing too here is, and I told you this earlier on today, was if he was just left on the bed or on the floor, and this wasn't made to look like a suicide, then the FBI would be down there. That place would be swarming, because there would be no other conclusion that it was a murder. Suicide, I hate to say, is an easy scapegoat out of drawing suspicion to anybody else. And
Exactly. And that might answer this next question. Why did they take him outside?
yeah, um,
That's maybe that was their plan. That was their plan. Yes, Michelle, also the elementary school bus drops off at the corner around 3:45, and I have a chart for 3:45. You can see into their backyard from the bus stop. The police never asked if they saw anything. So we're getting a real clear picture that there weren't a lot of questions. And if there were, and if there were answers, nobody knows because it's in a file somewhere. So I don't know. Anyway, Todd, did you want to finish your thought? I'm going to finish up on this
Um,
chart here.
yeah, and like I said, it one of the things that when I work on these is I don't try to piece the investigation together, and that's the thing people don't understand is I don't really want to know the whys as much as at least getting some evidence out there so that something can happen. Now, I did hear some rumor that they were trying to say that it's a safe community there, and from just what I feel, I think they should do some background checks in that community. There are some crimes
Yeah. And you can
committed.
see that from the seventh house here in the crime chart, which is Pisces. Sometimes Pisces can mean foreign, but in this case, I think it represents drugs. And you have a lot of drugs. Neptune can mean music too. And when you told me that, I guess it was earlier today about the rock music and all of that, or whatever punk music,
Yeah.
there's music has something to do with it. But there's just a lot of drugs. Venus in Pisces can mean drug money. Could have had drug money on them, but we just have, just like in the Delphi case. It's very odd with this ninth. It's they this crime was making big headlines and continue to, and that's the stellium up here. But with Uranus, that's the surprise, that's the shock, okay? And so I think that it has to do with maybe something Taurus, maybe during, having something to eat. And I apologize for those close to the case who have to relive this again. It's difficult to, you know, really explain this in a way that is not just so traumatizing. But this chart, I think, shows these two people, they're on drugs. Another thing that's really interesting too is what's in the eighth house is Aries. We've got the sun in Aries. This is a German community, and Aries is German. So they also, from what I hear, they really like it when you're fully German because they ask questions if you are.
This is not a wealthy community. This is very middle, okay, clean, hardworking people in that community. I often find in these neighborhoods that where they're sitting there measuring their grass compared to their neighbors. Do you know what I mean? Uh,
Mhm.
it's not like my house where, you're going to see a wheelbarrow parked right out in the middle or turned over on the front lawn, because
Mhm.
somebody there's going to say, hey, that doesn't belong there. That doesn't look aesthetically right.
Yeah.
It just reminds me of one of those communities. There was an X-Files show that was on, that same thing.
Right.
But I find in those communities that some of the most uh, unusual crimes occur under that normalcy. There's a lot of normalcy. There's often the opposite there. If you live in a crappy neighborhood and you got that around, nothing surprises you.
Mhm.
The one thing that's
Absolutely.
going to surprise you is a limousine coming down the road, you know. But in this
Well, yeah.
neighborhood, sometimes you get because people are more conservative, okay, or in their nature, hardworking, this and that, sometimes these younger people get involved in some serious stuff, cults,
Mhm.
drugs.
Well, and what's strange, it isn't strange to an astrologer who's looking at the descendant in Pisces. You have, what does Pisces represent? What does Neptune represent? A cult. There's Venus there, doesn't always mean a female, but it's interesting that Venus is in there. Like we saw Suzanne, was it Savannah Spurlock, which was a terrible case where she went home just thinking she was going to have fun and party with three guys. And then Venus was in Scorpio. And what happened was in that situation, there was a female investigator who was part of that story and actually was trying to help her. So, and she's in the news a lot and whatever. So,
Mhm.
in this case, it could still happen. Could be maybe Venus is going to help somehow. A spy, I don't know, a female spy, because that's what Pisces represents. Pisces and Neptune also represent plastic bags and represents glass. So we would see, and I believe Mercury there is aspecting Neptune. So hand on a glass. So I almost think that Uranus is like they went through that glass pretty fast because Uranus is very very fast. So yes, Lana, Venus sometimes means money, and that's why I'm thinking it could have been drug money. But in the sixth house, that's important too. I see, and if you rewind this chart back to around 7 in the morning, you can see where Sean is, and Sean is actually near Saturn and Mars. Now, Saturn and Mars, I think, is something that we really need to look at. These are two people, I think. Mars and the fact that they're in Aquarius. Aquarius is the community. Two guys in the community, maybe. Aquarius also means a trampoline. So at this point in time, they might be waiting. Saturn can mean waiting, waiting by the trampoline. They're waiting until the coast is clear. Maybe the landscaper has made a turn, but that shows that they're waiting.
Um, I think it's Lana here was asking
Yes.
about, she said before, she was saying that it must be within a community, or these people must be in the community. There was a little tidbit here that it's factual that the door was heard opening in the house. I think it was a couple days later. Family was there, heard the door, heard a snap on the trash can. You know, it's one of those trash cans that's there. And the bags, the plastic bags that were found in the house, some extra plastic bags that weren't theirs, were snatched real quick and taken right out of the house by somebody.
Yeah. So there were mistakes that were
So it was
made.
really close, very close.
Yeah, and there was a real interest. There were people that were looking, um, at the house over the next few days. They were very interested in the funeral and, just a lot of things. This case is not a suicide, and I don't know, what do you think is gonna happen next?
Well, and I'm sure there's somebody out there that is, might have been part of the team investigating this. And I didn't want to make any of this a critique on anybody's investigation skills or this and that. But although anybody in that position should be open to what we say. If you're not open to what we say, I think that there's an issue here, because in any case that has not been resolved or is open, um, everything should be considered. Everything.
Absolutely.
And
When
and I understand
Mhm.
there's limited time to work. There's limited budgets in these communities to investigate some of this stuff. But as I said in the beginning, out of all the suicides that I talk about with families, there's rarely a suicide that's in question. It's not that they
Mhm.
see it happen. It's not that they expected it to happen, but there was evidence of suicide there. And that's what kind of confuses me, is from what I see physically that happened.
Well, and I'm gonna look at this one last chart here. We've got a couple of asteroids. I'm not gonna say, like I said, what the asteroids are. You're just gonna have to remember. We have D arrest though in the first house, and that is an asteroid that Grace likes to use, and she looks to see if there's going to be some kind of information on whether there's going to be an arrest, or if de-arrest can just mean being held, so like held down, so it can mean both. Now I think it speaks to a lot of things here with de-arrest being in Virgo, and in the first house that shows what's right in front of Sean. So it shows that I think he is in the middle of doing his chores there and was surprised. But I also think that with the trine to Uranus, it shows that there's going to be potentially a surprise arrest. Like people will be shocked in the news and that it will happen. Maybe it describes people talking about an arrest. Now, I put Montgomery and Diggs in here, and I'm not going to go into the detail, but you can see which person has the most information, and you can see which person is more likely to work with Sean's mom or not.
Mhm.
And also you can see who has access to all of the photos, and there are a lot. Look at Sean. His personal name asteroid is next to Jupiter. It's conjunct, it's partile. Both are at 24 degrees, and partile Neptune. That is a lot of photos of Sean. So, and obviously, I mean, you would think that Sheriff Diggs has this because he's the police and they took those pictures. It's not an issue. But you can also see that square there, which I think gives us a couple of clues as to what's happening with those photos. So it's really interesting how you can see what's happening even after the crime. Who's
Mhm.
going to help? Who might not gel with certain people, and who's not giving up the information the way they should?
Well,
Or
yeah, and I believe that they would come back into this, the police,
that's possible.
with possible evidence, or somebody coming forward, like I said, the silent witnesses.
Exactly.
Although I do believe that the suspects are nearby still.
Well, I hope that it's not because Sean happened to listen to something or hear something or hear something that he wasn't supposed to. I hope he didn't. I'm sure he probably didn't.
I don't think so. I don't. I think he knew these. I knew of these people, but didn't know them personally.
Mhm. And they
Uh,
sure knew him. They sure knew him.
he was. This wasn't random. It was not planned, but he fit the profile,
Mhm.
unfortunately. And um, like I said, I had a lot of doubt going onto this case in the beginning. I didn't take anybody's word for it, but when I walked in, I just I saw what I saw. um,
Mhm.
I didn't know what it meant, but as the family explained the events, it did start to make sense.
Mhm.
And
Yep,
because
and
I was
Michelle.
seeing two people. It
Yeah.
was weird. I was seeing
Mhm.
two people, but I didn't know if I was making a mistake and seeing the wrong person. And I thought, wait a minute. There was one in the house, but there was one outside. And in fact, the 3-year-old, that's what he said. He says the two men are outside now.
Yes, exactly. And you can see with this crime chart what is going to, who is going to be able to have a good rapport with Montgomery. And there's a square there to moon, and we astrologers know what the moon represents. Um, can mean a mother figure. So, a mother figure, there might just be a breakdown in communications. And the only way that a mother figure can really get the answers that she needs is to, to deal with the boss, the big boss. So
I'm always amazed at the astrology part. I don't know what the Montgomery is.
that's a personal name asteroid. So
Okay.
yeah. And I bet, you know what, we should probably pull Todd's personal name asteroid. So
Um, uh,
we'll see
I,
what
I
happens.
I know, yeah. I have Sun and Moon in Virgo. I have Aquarius rising.
Well, when you say that, you see there in that chart that moon is in Virgo, and that to me that says a psychic who's Virgo. I think that could be you as well. And you have this grand trine there in this crime chart, and look at who's on the edge of that triangle. So it's possible that maybe somebody's going to be talking about you
Oh, I'm
in
sure
the
after that
news.
I probably will. Um, the and the last thing though is really about Sean and to the family. The mother has a real heart of gold
She does. She
for
does.
what she has gone through. Uh, she has incredible strength, but also she has such um, resilient.
Resilient.
No red flags from anybody.
But the fact that you were called by the family and you walked through the house, I'd like to ask you the question of what was that first thing that you felt when you walked through that house?
Yeah, the main thing was seeing the suspect upstairs as I was kind of walking through, um, and then reading the parents, and meeting the family. That's what was going on. Um, there wasn't anything real significant coming through at that time. But when I leave, that's when the stuff starts coming.
Oh,
And I
interesting.
also made some visits there on my own, driving through the neighborhood because I was more interested in the community and what I was picking up there. And so when I first came in, I asked Sean to give me a sign. I told him to pinch my finger if I'm near a house that's suspicious.
Okay.
And as I was going by a house, I felt a little thing on my hand, and it was within 4 houses or so of the family's house.
Wow. Well,
Um,
if it's true, I hope they do what's right, because there are other little boys around there. There are other children, and it would be a real shame if anything else happened. So I know that that's a big concern.
yeah, and I'm sure the police don't want anything else to happen.
No,
But I just hope, I hope that they're keeping open to the fact that this is not suicide.
exactly. Well, thank you so much, Todd. And we're going to end there. If any of you have not yet gone to change.org, and I'm going to put the link on this show description, and you can also go to What Happened to Sean, the group on Facebook, and sign the petition. It's amazing. Over 25,000 people have signed this petition, and each and every one of them thought that they could make a difference, and they did. So, just try to get to that if you can. There's also a GoFundMe page. It takes quite a bit of money to have investigators, working on this case. So, and they don't like to advertise that, and I don't blame them. There's optics and all of that, but they have been able to generate some money, and it has really helped them. So, and I guess that's all. Todd, thanks again, and tune in next Friday. I'm going to be talking to John Baisley on his latest case, and look for the information on that. And don't forget to hit subscribe and the like button, and we'll see you next
I
time.
have a feeling this will be a part 2 as well.
I hope so. That's
I
a good
think so.
prediction. All right. Thanks, Todd.
All right. You take care.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Okay. Bye.